Captain Daniel Harris stared at the screen on his ship's bridge. The numbers made no sense. His cargo vessel, the Aurora's Dream, was 3 days from the nearest station. They were hauling medical supplies and farming equipment to a new colony. It was boring work, but honest work. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lisa Monroe from her station. She was the ship's engineer, young and smart. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. Daniel walked over to look at her screen. "What is it?" "A distress signal. Very faint. It's coming from about 2 hours away if we change course." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. Out here in the empty parts of space, distress signals usually meant bad news. Pirates sometimes used fake signals to lure ships into traps, but sometimes people really needed help. "Can you tell what kind of ship it is?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "The signal is too weak. But Captain, it's not using any standard format, I know. It might be alien." Dr. Vincent Cole entered the bridge at that moment. He was the ship's doctor, a gray-haired man with kind eyes. "Did I hear you say alien?" "Maybe," Daniel said. "We've got a distress signal from an unknown source." Vincent looked worried. "What are you going to do?" That was the question. Daniel had served in the military before becoming a cargo captain. He had been a medic during the border conflicts. He knew what it meant to leave people behind. He also knew the Aurora's Dream was not a warship. They had 18 crew members and no weapons worth mentioning. "We're going to check it out," Daniel said finally. "Lisa, change course. But keep the engines ready in case we need to run." "Yes, sir," Lisa said. The next 2 hours felt very long. The crew gathered on the bridge talking in quiet voices. Everyone knew this could be dangerous. Space was huge and empty, and help was far away. When they got close enough, their sensors picked up the source of the signal. It was a small escape pod, damaged and drifting. No ship nearby. No debris field. Just one small pod alone in the dark. "Scanning now," Lisa said. "Captain, there's one life form inside. It's alive, but the readings are weak. Life support is failing. Can you identify the species?" Vincent asked. Lisa's face went pale as she looked at the results. "Oh no, Captain, it's Vralix." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew about the Vralix. They were warriors, conquerors. Their empire had crushed dozens of other species. They never showed mercy. They never took prisoners unless they needed slaves. Humans had never fought the Vralix directly. But the stories were enough to give anyone nightmares. "Are you sure?" Daniel asked. "Yes, sir. The biological markers are clear. It's definitely Vralix." One of the crew members, a young man named Peter Grant, spoke up. "Captain, we should leave now. The Vralix are killers. If we help this one, his people might come after us." Several others nodded in agreement. Daniel understood their fear. It was smart to be afraid of the Vralix. But he was also thinking about something else. Inside that pod was a living being who was dying, slowly suffocating as the life support failed, alone in the cold emptiness of space. "Vincent, if we bring him aboard, can you keep him alive?" Daniel asked. The doctor looked uncertain. "I don't know. I've never treated a Vralix before. Their biology is completely different from ours. But I'll try." Daniel took a deep breath. He knew this decision might get them all killed. But he also knew he couldn't live with himself if he left someone to die without even trying to help. "Bring the pod aboard," he ordered. "Vincent, get the medical bay ready. Lisa, I want you to figure out their life support systems. Everyone else, stay alert." The crew moved quickly, though Daniel could see the fear in their eyes. They used the ship's loading bay to pull in the damaged pod. When the bay was pressurized, Daniel and Vincent went in to look. The pod was strange, made of dark metal with sharp angles. It was scorched and broken in several places. Through a small window, they could see the Vralix inside. He was huge, even lying down. His skin was dark red and covered in armored plates. His face had features that reminded Daniel of a predator, with sharp teeth visible even with his mouth closed. But what struck Daniel most was how still he was, barely breathing. "Help me get this open," Vincent said. It took 20 minutes to figure out the pod systems and open it safely. When they finally got the Vralix out and onto a medical stretcher, Daniel could see how badly injured he was. Burns covered much of his body. Some of his armor plates were cracked. His breathing was shallow and irregular. They rushed him to the medical bay. Vincent worked frantically, using everything he knew about emergency medicine. Lisa rigged up a life support system using parts from their own equipment and pieces of the Vralix pod. She had to guess at what the alien needed to breathe and how to regulate his temperature. For 3 days, the crew barely slept. Vincent stayed in the medical bay almost constantly, monitoring the Vrelix's vital signs and adjusting treatments. Lisa modified the life support system a dozen times as they learned more about Vrelix biology. Daniel coordinated everything, making sure his people had what they needed. The Vrelix almost died twice. Each time, Vincent pulled him back. The doctor researched everything their computer had about Vrelix physiology, which wasn't much. He experimented carefully, trying different approaches until something worked. On the 4th day, the Vrelix opened his eyes. Daniel was in the medical bay when it happened. He saw the alien's eyes focus, saw him take in his surroundings. The Vrelix tried to sit up, but he was too weak. Vincent gently pushed him back down. "Easy," the doctor said softly. "You're safe. You're aboard the Aurora's Dream, a human cargo ship. We found your pod and brought you here." The Vrelix stared at them with eyes that burned like hot coals. He tried to speak, but only a harsh sound came out. Vincent held up a hand. "Don't try to talk yet. You were nearly dead when we found you. You've been unconscious for almost 4 days. Your injuries are serious, but you're going to survive." The Vrelix looked from Vincent to Daniel and back again. His expression was impossible to read. Was he angry? Confused? Grateful? Daniel couldn't tell. "We're going to take you to the nearest Vrelix outpost," Daniel said. "It's about a week away from here. You'll be with your people soon." The Vrelix's eyes widened slightly. He seemed surprised by that. He tried to speak again and managed one word in heavily accented human language. "Why?" Daniel smiled sadly. "Because you needed help. That's reason enough." The Vrelix stared at him for a long moment. Then his eyes closed again as exhaustion pulled him back towards sleep. But Daniel saw something in that last look before the alien slept. Something that might have been confusion, or maybe wonder. As Daniel left the medical bay, he wondered if he had made the right choice. Only time would tell if saving this Vrelix warrior would bring his crew safety or doom. But right now, in this moment, Daniel knew one thing for certain. They had saved a life. Whatever came next, they could face it knowing they had done the right thing. The Aurora's Dream turned toward Vrelix space, carrying its unusual passenger toward an uncertain future. Kelroth stood before the Council of War Leaders and felt their eyes judging him. The journey home had taken 2 weeks. The humans had kept their word, delivering him safely to a Vrelix military station. They had asked for nothing in return. That fact alone made the Council suspicious. "You expect us to believe this story?" War Matron Selvara leaned forward in her chair. She was old for a Vrelix, her armor plate scarred from 100 battles. "That weak human saved you out of simple kindness?" "It is the truth," Kelroth said firmly. "My pod was dying. They had no reason to help me. We have never been allies, yet they spent days keeping me alive. Their doctor worked without rest. Their engineer built me life support from nothing." Another council member, a massive warrior named Drekthar, made a dismissive sound. "Then they are fools. Or they plan to use you as a hostage." "They refused payment," Kelroth said. "They refused alliance. They refused even thanks. They only asked that I be well." Silvara's eyes narrowed. "This troubles me more than if they had demanded something. No species acts without purpose. What do these humans gain?" Kelroth had asked himself the same question during his recovery. He had watched the human crew through the medical bay window. They were small compared to Vrelix, soft. They had no natural weapons, no armor. By every measure his people used, humans should be prey, but they had not acted like prey. They had acted with a strange courage that Kelroth did not understand. The captain, Daniel Harris, had looked him in the eye without fear. Not the false bravery of someone trying to seem strong, but the quiet confidence of someone who knew his own worth. "I do not know what they gain," Kelroth admitted, "but I owe them a life debt. This is sacred law." The council members shifted uncomfortably. Life debt was ancient Vrelix tradition. If someone saved your life, you owed them a debt that could only be repaid by saving theirs in return. It was one of the few laws that all Vrelix respected, no matter their clan or world. "Very well," Silvara said after a long silence. "We will watch these humans. If they are, as you say, perhaps they are interesting. If they are plotting something, we will know." Over the following months, Vrelix ships began observing human space from a distance. They watched colonies and trade routes. They intercepted communications. They studied everything about humanity. Admiral Gregory Patterson knew he was being watched. Human sensors had detected the Vrelix ships, though the aliens probably didn't realize it. Patterson was a career military officer, but he was also a diplomat when needed. He understood that first contact with a species like the Vrelix could go very wrong, very quickly. "They've been out there for 6 weeks now," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was Patterson's security chief, a sharp woman who missed nothing. "No hostile moves, but they're definitely studying us." "Would you do any different in their position?" Patterson asked. "A cargo crew rescued one of their warriors. They want to know if we're a threat or an opportunity." "Or a weakness to exploit," Amy said darkly. Patterson nodded. That was the fear, wasn't it? That showing compassion would make humanity look weak. That the Vrelix would see mercy as something to punish rather than respect. But Patterson had read the report from the Aurora's dream. He had spoken with Captain Harris personally. The man had made his choice knowing it might be dangerous. He had saved a life because it was right, not because it was safe. "I'm going to request a meeting," Patterson said. "Official diplomatic contact. If they're watching us anyway, we might as well talk face to face." Amy looked worried. "Sir, the Vrelix don't negotiate. They conquer or they leave. There's no middle ground with them." "Then maybe it's time they learned there can be," Patterson said. The request went through official channels. For 2 weeks there was no response. Then suddenly a message came back. The Vrelix would meet. 1 ship, 1 diplomat. Neutral space. Patterson went alone except for Amy and a small crew. His ship, the Advocate, was a diplomatic vessel, fast but lightly armed. As they approached the meeting coordinates, they saw the Vrelix ship waiting. It was a warship, dark and dangerous looking. It could have destroyed the Advocate in seconds. But it held position, waiting. "They're hailing us," the communications officer said. "Put them through," Patterson ordered. The screen showed a Vrelix warrior in full armor. Patterson recognized him from the photos in the report. "Kelroth. Admiral Patterson," Kelroth said. His voice was deep and rough. "I am told you wish to speak." "I do," Patterson said calmly. "Your people have been watching us. I thought it was time we talked directly." "Watching, yes. We do not understand you, humans. You saved my life when you could have left me to die. War Matron Selvara believes you have hidden purpose, that you are not what you seem." Patterson smiled slightly. "We're exactly what we seem. We saw someone who needed help and we helped. It's not complicated." "But you gained nothing," Kelroth said, sounding frustrated. "In war, every action must have purpose. Every choice must advance your position. You advance nothing by saving me." "We're not at war with you," Patterson pointed out. "And even if we were, leaving someone to die in space goes against everything we believe in. We have rules, even in conflict. We have lines we don't cross." Kelroth was quiet for a moment. "The Vrelix have no such rules. We fight until victory or death. We show no mercy because mercy is weakness, is it?" Patterson asked. "Your people have conquered many worlds through strength, but has that made you friends or just created enemies who wait for you to show weakness? We choose differently. We make friends through respect and help. When trouble comes, we face it together with allies." "Pretty words," Kelroth said. "But the galaxy is not kind to the weak." "We're not weak," Amy said suddenly, speaking up from her station. "We just don't confuse strength with cruelty." Kelroth turned his burning eyes toward her. "You are small, soft. You have no claws, no armor. What strength do you have?" "The strength to do what's right even when it's hard," Amy said. "The strength to help even when it costs us. The strength to stand together. That's stronger than any claw or armor." Patterson expected Kelroth to laugh or get angry. Instead, the Vrelix warrior looked thoughtful. "War Matron Selvara wishes to test you," Kelroth said finally. "She wants to see if your compassion is real or just words. If you are strong or just lucky." "What kind of test?" Patterson asked carefully. "I do not know, but it will come. The Council is deciding now what to do about humans. Some want to conquer you before you become a threat. Others want to ignore you. A few like me want to see what happens if we try something new." "And what's that?" Patterson asked. "Waiting," Kelroth said. "Watching. Learning." The captain of the Aurora's dream did something no one has done before. He treated a Vrelix as someone worth saving. "I wish to see if this is true of all humans or just him." The conversation ended soon after. As the Vrelix ship departed, Amy looked at Patterson with concern. "They're going to test us, sir. That could mean anything." "I know," Patterson said quietly. "But we can't change who we are just because someone might challenge us. We'll face whatever comes the way we always do. Together. With courage." and with the belief that doing right matters more than doing easy. Back in Vralik space, Kelroth made his report to the council. He told them about Patterson's calm strength, about Amy's fierce defense of human values, about the quiet confidence that seemed to fill every human he met. "They are not what I expected," he told Silvara privately after the council meeting. "They are not warriors like us, but they have something we do not. A reason to fight beyond conquest. They fight for each other, for beliefs, for hope." "Hope is not armor," Silvara said. "It does not stop weapons." "No," Kelroth agreed. "But it might be something more valuable. It might be what makes life worth living, not just surviving." Silvara looked at him with something that might have been respect, or might have been concern. Her best warrior was changing, and she did not know if that was good or dangerous. "We will see," she said finally. "The test will come soon enough. And then we will know if human compassion is strength or foolishness." Neither of them knew how soon that test would arrive or how terrible it would be. The alarm woke Colonel Stephen Blake at 4 a.m. He sat up fast, reaching for his uniform before his mind fully caught up with his body. After 20 years in the military, some instincts never faded. "Blake here," he said into his communicator. "Sir, you need to get to command now." It was Lieutenant Chris Moore, the Night Watch officer. His voice was tight with fear. "We've got contacts entering the system. A lot of them." Blake was running before the conversation ended. New Haven was a farming colony, peaceful and quiet. They had 50,000 civilians, most of them families. His defense force consisted of 42 soldiers and equipment that was 10 years out of date. They had never expected trouble out here. The command center was chaos when he arrived. Dr. Helen Torres was already there, still in her night clothes. She was the colony's administrator, the person who kept everything running. Her face was pale. "How bad is it?" Blake asked. Lieutenant Moore pointed at the display. 17 ships. They came out of dark space 20 minutes ago. They're not responding to hails. Their trajectory is directly toward us. Can you identify them? Blake asked. Moore shook his head. Nothing in our database matches. But sir, look at their hulls. Blake leaned closer. The ships were strange, organic looking. They seemed to be made of metal and something else. Something that might have been alive once. Or still was. He felt his stomach sink. Get me Commander Morrison on the Vigilant, Blake ordered. And sound the evacuation alarm. I want every civilian in the shelters within the hour. The Vigilant was a patrol ship, usually boring duty in this quiet sector. Commander Jack Morrison was a good officer, but his ship was small and old. Still, it was the only military vessel within 3 days of New Haven. Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He looked grim. I saw them, Blake. I'm burning hard toward you, but I'm 6 hours out. What are we dealing with? Blake asked. I pulled up some old files. Stephen, I think it's the Scourge. Everyone in the command center froze. The Scourge were nightmares from history, a hive mind that consumed everything in its path. They had been quiet for 1,000 years. Most people thought they were extinct or just legends. The Scourge are supposed to be gone, Dr. Torres said quietly. They're not, Morrison said, and they're heading right for you. I'll get there as fast as I can, but Blake, you need to prepare for the worst. The next few hours were organized chaos. Blake's soldiers set up defensive positions around the main colony. They only had enough weapons for a last stand, not a real battle. Farmers and teachers became soldiers, carrying rifles they barely knew how to use. Dr. Torres coordinated the evacuation. Families rushed to the underground shelters with whatever they could carry. Children cried. Parents tried to be brave. Everyone knew the shelters were not real protection, just a way to buy time. Blake stood on the colony's outer wall and watched the ships approach. They were closer now, close enough to see details. The hulls pulsed like they were breathing. Weapons bristled from every surface. These were not ships built for exploration or trade. They were built for one thing only, killing. They're in weapons range, Lieutenant Moore reported. Still not responding to communication. All units prepare for combat, Blake ordered. His voice was steady even though his heart was racing. Remember your training. Protect the civilians. Make every shot count. The first Scourge ship opened fire. Energy weapons tore through the colony's outer buildings like they were paper. Blake's soldiers returned fire, their small guns barely scratching the alien hulls. Focus on the smaller vessels, Blake shouted. Try to slow them down. His people fought bravely. They used every trick they knew. They rigged farming equipment into makeshift bombs, They turned irrigation systems into traps that channeled the enemy ground forces into kill zones. They gave everything they had, but it was not enough. The Scourge came in waves. Their soldiers were terrible to look at, part machine and part something that had once been alive. They moved with horrible purpose, killing anything in their path. Blake lost soldiers fast. Good people who had families, dreams, futures. They died buying minutes for the civilians in the shelters. Every minute mattered. Commander Morrison arrived after 4 hours of fighting. The Vigilant came in fast, guns blazing. Morrison made attack run after attack run, his ship taking terrible damage. He destroyed 2 Scourge vessels before his shields failed completely. "Morrison, get out of here," Blake ordered over the radio. "Your ship can't take much more." "Neither can you," Morrison replied. "I'm not leaving. Another attack run." The Vigilant's hull glowed red from heat and damage. But Morrison kept coming back, kept fighting. Blake felt tears in his eyes watching that brave, stubborn man refuse to abandon them. By hour 6, the outer walls had fallen. Blake and his remaining soldiers fell back to the secondary positions. They were down to 18 people still able to fight. The shelters behind them held thousands of civilians with nowhere else to go. "This is it," Blake told his people quietly. "We hold here or they get to our families. I know you're tired. I know you're scared. But we're going to stand. We're going to fight. And we're going to make these monsters pay for every step forward." His soldiers straightened despite their wounds and exhaustion. They checked their weapons one last time. Blake felt proud of them, even knowing they were all about to die. The Scourge came at them like a wave. Blake's people fired until their guns ran dry, then fought with knives and fists and anything they could grab. It was hopeless and they knew it, but they did not stop. Blake took a hit in his chest, felt ribs crack. He kept firing. Lieutenant Moore went down beside him, then got back up and kept fighting. Dr. Torres, who had never been a soldier, stood with them, shooting with shaking hands. Above them, the Vigilant made one last run. Morrison's ship was more wreck than vessel now. Blake heard him on the radio, his voice calm. "It's been an honor, Stephen. Take care of them." The Vigilant rammed straight into the largest Scourge ship. The explosion lit up the sky. Both ships were destroyed in seconds. Blake whispered a prayer for Morrison and his crew. The Scourge kept coming. Blake prepared to give the order to fall back to the shelters. It would not save anyone, but maybe they could buy a few more minutes, a few more moments of life for the people they loved. That was when his communicator crackled. A voice he did not recognize, deep and rough. "Human defenders, this is Kelroth of the Vrelix Empire. Hold your position. Help is arriving." Blake looked up. Through the smoke and fire, he saw new ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Big ships. Dark ships covered in weapons. Vrelix warships. He had heard the stories about the Vrelix. How they conquered and destroyed. How they showed no mercy. How they were death itself in physical form. Right now, they were the most beautiful thing Blake had ever seen. "Everyone hold," Blake shouted to his soldiers. "Help is here!" The Vrelix ships opened fire and the battle changed in seconds. Energy weapons far more powerful than anything humans had tore into the Scourge vessels. Vrelix drop ships descended through the chaos, carrying warriors who hit the ground fighting. Blake watched in amazement as Vrelix soldiers crashed into the Scourge forces. The aliens fought with savage efficiency, their natural weapons and armor turning them into living tanks. They pushed the Scourge back from the colony walls, giving Blake's people room to breathe. A Vrelix warrior approached Blake's position. It was Kelroth himself, his armor scorched from battle. "Colonel Blake," Kelroth said, "your people fought well. Now let us finish this." Blake wanted to ask why. Why had the Vrelix come? Why were they helping? But he was too tired, too hurt, too grateful. Instead, he just nodded. "Thank you," he managed to say. Kelroth's eyes seemed to glow in the firelight. "Your people saved my life when they had no reason to. Now I save yours. The debt begins to be repaid." Then he turned and went back into the battle, and Blake watched as humanity's former enemies became their saviors. War Matron Selvara stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the battle unfold. 12 Vrelix warships against 17 Scourge vessels. The numbers were almost even, but the Scourge had not expected to face real resistance. That made all the difference. "Focus fire on the largest ship," she ordered. "Destroy their command vessel first." Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. The Vrelix had been warriors for 10,000 years. This was what they were born for. Massive energy cannons lit up the darkness of space. The Scourge ship's hull cracked under the assault, then exploded. Target destroyed, her weapons officer reported. Enemy ships are breaking formation. Good, hunting tactics now. Pack formation. Run them down one by one. The Vralic ships moved like predators circling prey. They split the Scourge fleet apart, isolating individual ships and destroying them. The Scourge were dangerous, but they were not warriors. They were consumers. They overwhelmed through numbers and brutality, not skill. Against the Vralics, that was not enough. Selvarra watched her tactical display as her ships tore through the enemy. Part of her enjoyed the battle. This was what the Vralics were meant to do. But another part, a newer part that she did not fully understand, was thinking about something else. They were not fighting for conquest. They were not fighting for resources or territory. They were fighting to protect, to save. Because a human cargo captain had shown mercy to one Vralic's warrior months ago. It felt strange, but it also felt right in a way that surprised her. War Matron, the ground forces are requesting additional support, her communications officer said. The Scourge have concentrated forces near the human colony center. Deploy all remaining dropships, Selvarra ordered. I want that colony secured. On the ground, Kelroth fought like the warrior he was born to be. His claws tore through Scourge soldiers. His armor turned aside their weapons. Around him, other Vralic's warriors pushed forward in tight formations. But Kelroth was also watching the humans. He saw them fighting despite terrible wounds. Saw them protecting each other. Saw them stand when any reasonable being would have run. Colonel Blake was still on his feet somehow, his chest wrapped in temporary bandages. The human colonel directed his remaining soldiers with calm precision, working alongside the Vralics as if they had trained together for years. A group of Scourge soldiers broke through toward the civilian shelters. Blake's people were too far away to stop them. Kelroth moved without thinking, putting himself between the enemy and the shelter entrance. 3 Scourge came at him at once. He killed the first with his claws, the second with his rifle. The third got close enough to wound him, its blade scoring his side. Kelroth ignored the pain and crushed its skull with his armored fist. Behind him, he heard a small sound. He turned and saw a human child, maybe 6 years old, standing in the shelter doorway. She had dark hair and wide eyes. She was staring at him, at the monster who had just killed to protect her. Kelroth expected fear, screaming. But the child did something unexpected. She smiled. "Thank you," she said in her small voice. Then her mother pulled her back into the shelter and they were gone. But Kelroth stood frozen for a moment. That image burned into his mind. A human child smiling at a Vralic's warrior, thanking him. When had anyone thanked a Vralic's for anything except leaving them alive? "Kelroth, we need you at the east wall," another warrior called. Kelroth shook himself and moved. There was still fighting to do. In space, Captain Ryan Clark was having the worst day of his life. He was a civilian transport pilot, not military. He had been evacuating wounded colonists when the Scourge found his ship. Now his engines were dying, his hull was breached in 3 places, and he was going down. "This is transport ship Hope's Light," he called on all frequencies. "I've got 42 civilians aboard and I'm losing control. If anyone can hear this, we're going down hard." His co-pilot, a young woman named Sarah Kim, was working frantically at the controls. "I can't stabilize us. We're going to crash." Ryan looked at the people behind him. Families, children, all looking at him with trust, believing he could save them. His hands tightened on the controls. "Then we crash as gently as we can," he said. "Sarah, transfer all remaining power to the landing thrusters. Everyone else, brace for impact." That was when something appeared beside his ship. A Vralic's gunship, smaller and faster than the big warships. It matched his speed exactly. A voice came over his radio, speaking human language with a thick accent. "Transport Hope's Light, this is Vralic's pilot Mortak. I see your situation. Extending magnetic tether now." Ryan watched in amazement as the gunship attached a powerful tether to his ship's hull. He felt his ship slow, felt it stabilize. The Vralic's pilot was pulling them away from the crash trajectory. "You need to land that ship," Mortak said. "I will control your speed and direction. You focus on keeping it steady." Ryan had never worked with a Vralic's before. He had never even seen one up close. But right now he trusted this alien warrior with his life and the lives of his passengers. Together, they brought the transport down. It was not gentle, and Ryan heard metal screaming as they hit. But they were down and everyone was alive. "Thank you," Ryan said over the radio. "You saved us." "You do not die today, human," Mortak replied. "The debt is not yet paid." Then the gunship pulled away to rejoin the battle. The fighting lasted another 3 hours. The Vralics were relentless, pushing the Scourge back step by step. When the last enemy ship tried to escape, Selvaara's flagship hunted it down and destroyed it. No survivors. No mercy for the Scourge. When it was finally over, Blake stood in the ruins of his colony and tried to process what had happened. Half the buildings were destroyed. Fires burned everywhere, but the people were alive. The civilians in the shelters were safe. Kelroth found him there, standing in the wreckage. "Your colony will need rebuilding," the Vralics warrior said. Blake laughed, and it hurt his broken ribs. "That's an understatement. But yeah, we'll rebuild. That's what humans do. Why did you stand?" Kelroth asked suddenly. "You knew you could not win. You could have evacuated while there was time. Abandoned this place. But you stayed and fought against impossible odds." Blake looked at him with tired eyes. "Because these are our people. Our families, our home. Where else would we go? What kind of people would we be if we ran and left them to die? Most species would run," Kelroth said quietly. "It is logical. Survival is paramount." "Maybe," Blake said. "But we're not built that way. We protect what we love. We stand for what matters. We don't calculate the odds before deciding to do right." Kelroth was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Your Captain Harris showed mercy when it was madness. Your people chose compassion when conquest was easy. The Vralics do not forget such things. A life debt was owed." "You saved thousands of lives today," Blake said. "I'd say the debt is more than paid." "No," Kelroth said, and his voice was firm. "This is only the beginning. You showed us something we had forgotten. That strength is not just about power. That warriors can fight for more than conquest. Captain Harris saved one life, but through that action he may have saved 2 species." Blake did not understand what Kelroth meant. Not fully, but he was too tired to ask. He just nodded. Above them, Selvaara's ships took up position around New Haven. They would stay until human reinforcements arrived. They would protect these strange, brave, compassionate beings who had somehow earned the respect of the galaxy's fiercest warriors. In her command center, Selvaara composed a message to the Vralics High Council. It was time for a conversation that would change everything. Time to discuss an idea that would have been unthinkable just months ago. An alliance. A real one. Built not on conquest or fear, but on mutual respect and shared purpose. The Vralics and humanity had both been tested by the Scourge. They had fought together, bled together, stood together against the dark, and in doing so, they had discovered something neither species had expected to find. They had discovered that sometimes mercy is not weakness. Sometimes compassion is the beginning of strength. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save a life when no one is watching and nothing is gained except the knowledge that you did what was right. Captain Harris had done that. And in doing so, he had changed the galaxy forever. Ambassador Laura Martinez stood before the assembled leaders and felt the weight of history on her shoulders. 3 years had passed since the Battle of New Haven. 3 years of slow, careful work. 3 years of building trust between 2 species that should have been enemies. Now she stood in a chamber built by both human and Vralics hands, ready to sign a treaty that would bind them together forever. "This is a historic day," she began. Her voice carried to millions watching across human space and the Vralics Empire. 3 years ago we were strangers. Today we are allies. Tomorrow we will be friends." Kelroth stood beside her in full ceremonial armor. He was no longer just a warrior. He was now the official liaison between their species, the bridge that connected 2 very different peoples. "The Vralics have been warriors for 10,000 years, Kelroth said. "We conquered hundreds of worlds. We thought strength meant domination. We were wrong. Humanity showed us a different path." In the audience, Admiral Gregory Patterson watched with satisfaction. His early diplomatic efforts had been crucial in opening channels between the species. Beside him sat Colonel Stephen Blake, still recovering from injuries he would carry for life. Blake's defense of New Haven had made him a hero to both humans and Vralics. War Matron Selvaara sat in a place of honor, her scarred armor polished to a shine. She had become the strongest advocate for the alliance within Vralics' leadership. The old warrior who had once questioned human intentions now defended them fiercely. "The treaty we signed today is more than words on paper," Martinez continued. "It is a promise, a commitment that our peoples will stand together against threats, that we will share knowledge, resources, and protection, that we will face the future as partners, The actual signing took only minutes. Martinez and Silvara put their marks on the document, making it official. The crowd erupted in cheers, a mix of human voices and Vrelix's battle cries. But the real celebration came later in smaller, quieter moments. Lieutenant Amy Foster found herself training alongside Vrelix's warriors at a joint military facility. She had been skeptical of the alliance at first, remembering the Vrelix's brutal reputation. But working with them day after day had changed her mind. "You hold your weapon wrong," a Vrelix instructor named Tarvek told her. "Like this. Use your whole body." Amy adjusted her stance. "Better? Better? You humans are small, but you learn fast. And you think in ways we do not. Yesterday, your tactical solution to the supply problem was clever. We would have simply fought through. You found a way to avoid the fight entirely. Sometimes avoiding a fight is smarter than winning one," Amy said. Tarvek made a sound that might have been laughter. "This is what you teach us. That victory is not always about defeating enemies. Sometimes it is about making enemies unnecessary." At the rebuilt colony on New Haven, human and Vrelix children played together in the streets. The sight would have been impossible to imagine 3 years ago. Now it was normal. A young human boy named Tyler Chen kicked a ball to a Vrelix cub named Shrotka. The cub caught it easily with his claws, then gently kicked it back. They were learning each other's games, creating new ones that worked for both species. Tyler's mother watched from a doorway. She had been in the shelters during the attack. She had heard the fighting above, thought she would never see the sky again. Now she watched her son play with the child of the species that had saved them all. "It is strange, yes?" a voice said beside her. She turned to see a Vrelix parent, Shrotka's mother, standing nearby. "Very strange," Tyler's mother agreed. "But good strange." "Good strange," the Vrelix agreed. "Our children will grow up knowing both peoples. They will not carry the old fears. Perhaps they will build something better than we could imagine." On the research station Harmony, human scientists worked alongside Vrelix engineers. They were developing new technologies by combining their different approaches. Humans brought creativity and innovative thinking. Vrelix brought raw power and battle-tested designs. Dr. Vincent Cole, the doctor who had saved Kelroth's life, now led a medical program studying both species' biology. He trained other doctors in treating Vrelix patients. Vrelix medical staff learned human anatomy. Every day they broke new ground. "You know," Vincent said to his Vrelix colleague, a physician named Kelthra, 3 years ago I was terrified of your people. Now I can't imagine doing this work without you." 3 years ago I thought humans were weak prey," Kelthra replied. "Now I know you are the strongest species I have ever met." "Not in body but in spirit," Vincent smiled. "We learned from you too. Before we thought strength and compassion were opposites. You showed us they can work together." The alliance expanded beyond just humanity and the Vrelix. Other species watched what was happening and wanted to be part of it. The coalition of free worlds began to form, built on the principles that had brought humanity and the Vrelix together. When the Scourge attacked again, this time in much greater numbers, they found something they did not expect. A galaxy united, human strategy combined with Vrelix ferocity, other species adding their own strengths. The Scourge were driven back and contained. After the battle, Fleet Admiral Patterson stood on the bridge of a joint human Vrelix command ship. Beside him was Silvara, now his co-commander. "We make a good team," Patterson said. Silvara's eyes glowed with what humans had learned to recognize as satisfaction. "Yes, your tactical planning and our combat power. Together we are greater than either could be alone." "That's what this has all been about," Patterson said, "finding strength in unity rather than conquest." 1 year after the treaty signing, a special ceremony was held aboard the Aurora's Dream. The cargo ship had been preserved as a museum, a reminder of where it all began. Captain Daniel Harris stood on his old bridge surrounded by reporters and dignitaries. He was older now, gray at the temples, but his eyes still held the same quiet strength that had led him to make a choice that changed everything. "They keep calling me a hero," Harris said to Kelroth, who stood nearby. "I don't feel like one. I just did what felt right." "That is what makes you a hero," Kelroth replied. "You did not save me for reward or recognition. You did it because a life needed saving. That simple act of compassion started everything that followed." Harris looked around his old ship. They had added a museum exhibit telling the story. Pictures of the rescue, of New Haven's defense, of the alliance forming. Of the galaxy changing, do you think it will last? Harris asked. The Alliance, I mean. Can two species as different as ours really build something permanent? Kelroth was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I think of that human child who smiled at me during the battle. She did not see a monster. She saw someone who protected her. If our children can see each other that way, then yes, it will last. A new plaque was unveiled on the ship that day. It was written in both human and Vralix languages. Here mercy was shown. Here compassion proved stronger than fear. Here one life was saved. And in saving it, two species learned that the truest strength lies not in conquest, but in choosing kindness when no one would blame you for walking away. Here, everything changed. Years later, historians would study the Aurora's dream and the events it triggered. They would debate what made humanity special. Was it compassion? Determination? The ability to see potential allies instead of enemies? But those who were there, who lived through those early days, knew the truth was simpler. Humans showed mercy because they believed every life had value. They fought for each other because community mattered more than individual survival. They made friends instead of conquest because they understood that a galaxy united was stronger than a galaxy divided. And when they showed that mercy to one Vralix warrior, when they saved his life expecting nothing in return, they planted a seed that grew into something magnificent, an alliance built on respect. A friendship forged in battle, a future where different species stood together not because they had to, but because they chose to. In the end, that choice made all the difference. The legacy of Captain Daniel Harris and the Aurora's dream lived on in every human Vralix colony. In every joint military operation, in every child who grew up knowing both species as friends and protectors, they had shown mercy when it was hard. They had offered compassion when it was risky. They had saved one life when they could have passed by, and legend, in the form of the mighty Vralix Empire, had repaid them 1,000 times over. But more than that, both species had gained something neither had possessed before. Humanity gained the strength and protection of the galaxy's greatest warriors. The Vralix gained a reason to fight beyond simple conquest, a purpose beyond domination. Together they became something new, something better, something that would stand against the darkness and say, here we stand. Here we fight. Not for conquest or glory, but for each other, for the belief that every life matters, for the hope that tomorrow can be better than today, and that more than any weapon or warship was what made them truly strong.